when you press So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Cheltenham Borough Council's Cabinet. I'm Councillor Rowena Hay and Leader of the Council. Any members of the public? Actually, what I need to say is that for whatever reason, we've had engineers looking at it. This will be not be live streamed tonight because there is an issue, but it will be recorded and then it will be posted for anybody who wishes to watch the proceedings of tomorrow. So if you're present, welcome, Mr. Edgwell. If you are here to make a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording are also in operation in the foyers and the public gallery, and those recordings will be held for 5 months. We're not expecting any fire alarm tests, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest fire exit. That takes us on to apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Mike Collins. Declarations of interests. Councillor Horwood, I believe you had one.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just under item 7, I just refer to my register of members' interests, which shows my membership of the Friends of Leckhampton Hill and Charlton Kings Common. But I don't believe that's a prejudicial interest, so I shall remain and take part.
Thank you. That leads us on to the minutes of the last meeting. Does any member want to make any comment or changes to those minutes? I don't see anybody raising their hands, so could I see a show of hands, please, to approve those, for those that were here? Is there anybody not here? So we won't record that as an abstention because you weren't here. So we have 2 questions from a Mr. David Redgwell. You've received written answers, Mr. Redgwell, to both of them. Do you have a supplementary?
Sorry, I do on question 1. I am surprised really at the fact it's left to a senior officer to make sure that diversity and equalities training is carried out in the authority, especially an authority which has a university and a National Star College. It is very difficult being a disabled person in Cheltenham. This is a lovely town to live in, to make it absolutely clear, and it's a good council. But I spend a lot of my time talking to your officers, trying to get them to understand everything from moving a mere litter bin that blocks a drop curb so I can't get off Castle curb so I can't get off a bus, to working with Great Victoria there on trying to get parks and gardens made accessible and events. I mean, I can't even get, it was lovely to go to the Mayor's event, but I couldn't get into Sanford Park because the disabled entrances aren't there. If you have a look, they simply not there, simply isn't disabled accessible from the main high street or from round by the back of the Wetherspoons public house. So it is extremely difficult. Your housing company, there's very little equalities training, diversity training there. And when you come in, there's some lovely people on desk upstairs, but you're always talking about who's doing this and who's responsible for that and who's done an equality impact assessment, who's looked at it from a disability point of view. Classic example was was Arles Road, where the bin was taken away from the bus stop and then put back on the Castle curb, and had to have the old process all over again to get Ubercoats and remove it. The county were just going to come along and bin it, to be honest, but they didn't, by diplomacy. And of course, I'm not a great lover of Cheltenham Civic Society, I must admit. I don't think they're made up of people of all equality in society. But I do agree with them about the public realm and the safety and the lack of drop curbs and castle curbs. I have different reasons for not liking tarmac. They might have aesthetic reasons. So I really am just pushing tonight. Gloucester has equalities officers, Bristol City Council, Baines, Bath North East Somerset. Even Tewkesbury shares a service. Not having anybody I can turn to as a disabled person in the authority who I can identify. I did identify a lovely lady called Victoria before to help us, but we need to find somebody that disabled people can actually feel will champion their causes. People are gay and diverse in the council, whether it's an elected member or whether it happens to be an officer, that actually can make sure there's training and equalities amongst the staff, because there is certainly. I do work with the Department of Transport in city cross country trains, and sit on panels both in Bristol for the mayor and other authorities, and it's not quite at that standard, and I would just ask that we perhaps look at it. So that's my request. I'm not necessarily want an answer tonight, but I think it's an issue that needs some addressing. I've had a copy of your consultation on equalities and diversity. Thank you very much. I say I've got a lot of respect for Victoria over there for the work she champions, but I do think it needs to run through the thread of the authority.
I'm not sure that there's a question in there, Mr Redwell, for Councillor Telford in
The
that.
question was, would you look again at the way the structure works in terms of identifying at least an officer and a member who disabled people and people living in the borough can turn to get support and help and advice, and that's the person we seem to lack at the moment.
I think it's fair to say that what we do have is equalities and inclusion and diversity actually runs through the core of what this council does. So, and when it comes to accessibility, we do have a disabled forum that actually we do consult on, and we go to them for as part of a consultation on anything that we do. In terms of drop curbs, I suggest that actually what you do is you take that up with your county councillor, because it's not within our gift to do the drop curbs. That is county council highways. But there's no reason that we can't look at, perhaps understanding a bit better, and we could take it offline and understand a bit better what it is that you're asking. We don't have a lot of money, so actually having a very specific designated role for ED&I think what we've tried to do is say that actually it runs through the core of what we do, and everybody should be looking at that in the same way that those assessments community impact assessments are done. So I think we'll come back to you with a bit more detail, perhaps of the things that we do and how we could perhaps support you a bit more through your request.
You would welcome that conversation very much. So there's some room for improvement, I think. Yeah.
There's always room for improvement in almost anything. All of us do. Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Edgewell, for your second question?
I think my second question really is, whilst I understand the joint spatial strategy for Cheltenham, Gloucester, Tewkesbury strategic plan and local plan, there is a certain amount of facilities that are being built to M standard, but as the community gets older, there's a need in a place like Cheltenham for a lot more housing to be built to a standard where wheelchair users can use the housing, or where people can visit people with wheelchairs. So I suppose my question is, what, outside of the usual planning process, you're also the housing authority with ability to build. What is the council doing to look at providing a lot more disabled accessible housing, but also to look at more lifetime housing beyond the M standard housing and that includes, and this is frustrating because we don't have a unitary authority, but that does include liaising with Gloucestershire County Council to make sure that when you build the houses, that we've actually got pavements and footways and facilities they provide to make sure they're fully accessible, which don't always see at the moment. So just wondering how much work is going on that. And again, perhaps that can be looked at again to see if we can improve that. I think that is some coordination with the county about how you build and then you find the curbs outside. And it's difficult because you say it's unitary and not unitary. We haven't got a unitary council, but that does need some improvement. But I'd like to see how many more houses that can be built in the borough for people with reduced mobility, wheelchair users and people with disabilities. Thank you.
I think, Mr Edgewell, that's one that we're going to have to come back to you on. In the absence of the Cabinet member who covers that area, if you like, also officers not here, I can't answer your question, so we'll come back to you on that one. Give you a written answer.
I'm very happy on both the questions to be taken away and thought about, because that's why I've raised them here tonight, not to have a go at Cheltenham Borough Council, just to try and get awareness raised of what it's like living in the borough as a disabled person and how it is to get around the borough and what it's like to have very limited housing in the borough, options in the borough as well.
I'm aware of your issues as well when we were corresponding about accommodation.
It's not a personal issue. It's
No, I appreciate it, but it impacts.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I've got great respect for Victoria, the work she's done on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions, Mr Edgewell. We have nothing referred today from the council or from overview and scrutiny or from any other of the committees, which then leads us on to the Cabinet report for tonight. The first report is our housing assistance policy, which you can find on pages 15 to 44 of the report, and it's the report of Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Chair. Leader even. I'd like to give a sort of brief introduction to our new housing assistance policy. It's worth noting that the Regulatory Reform Housing Assistance England and Wales Order 2002 provides general powers for local housing authorities to provide assistance for housing renewal, including home adaptations. However, the powers can only be used in accordance with a published housing assistance policy. This report sets out how the Council will provide financial support to improve and adapt homes in Cheltenham for eligible disabled persons whose needs are assessed by a County Council occupational therapist. It also brings together all existing CBC policies for discretionary funding for adaptations to a disabled person's home. The report also introduces new forms of assistance for discretionary funding, and the agreed discretionary policies and funding available in association with adaptations to a disabled person's home included in the housing policy are: 1. Local land charge. 2. Extended warranties and servicing of specialist equipment such as stair lifts, through-floor lifts, external step lifts and wash-dry toilets. 3. Funding for abortive fees. It is strongly recommended that applicants appoint a surveyor who act on their behalf to assist with the grant application process, although it is the applicant's choice whether to use the services of a surveyor and who they choose to contractually appoint as their surveyor. 4. Shortfall funding. The maximum grant limit for a mandatory disabled facilities grant is £30,000, although any grant assistance is subject to a means test unless the work is for a disabled child. The grant limit was first introduced in 2008 and has not been increased to reflect changes in inflation and building costs. It is therefore no longer possible to fund, for example, the cost of a ground floor bathroom extension within the mandatory disabled fertility grants limit. To address this, the Council offers discretionary funding to cover the shortfall between the cost of the grant eligible adaptations and the mandatory £30,000 limit. 5. Funding towards disabled persons' assessed contribution. The level of grant assistance available through a mandatory disabled facilities grant is subject to a means test unless the work is for a disabled child. The means test calculation looks at the income and savings of the disabled person and their partner, if applicable, and compares this to notional outgoings based on a variety of premiums provided by the government. If there is deemed to be more money coming into the household than is needed to live on, the disabled person is expected to use some of this surplus money to fund the adaptations identified as necessary, the calculated figures of the disabled person's assessed contribution. The mandatory grant assistance available for the difference between the disabled person's assessed contribution and the actual cost of the proposed adaptations. The premiums used within the means test calculation have not been increased since 2008. But since that time, state benefits, salaries, occupational pensions, etc. have increased. This means that a disabled person calculated as having no assessed contribution in 2008 may be calculated as having a contribution in 2024, despite their financial circumstances being the same. To address this, the Council offers discretionary funding to cover the cost of a disabled person's assessed contribution where the contribution is less than £10,000. 6. Funding for rapidly progressing and/or highly debilitating conditions. This discretionary funding has been introduced to assist disabled people with a rapidly progressing and/or highly debilitating condition such as motor neurons disease. Often people with motor neurons disease want to continue to work during the early stages of the disease, which can make them ineligible for a disabled facilities grant through means testing. But by the time they can no longer work, an unadapted home can make day-to-day activities very difficult to manage. To assist with these cases, the Council will fast-track any requests for grant assistance from a disabled person with a rapidly progressing and/or highly debilitating condition and will carry out a provisional test of resources. 7. Adaptation support grant. The most common example of this would be works carried out to upgrade the electrical installation at a property to enable the installation of an electric shower or a stair lift. The work needed to upgrade the electrics would be classed as a repair and not an adaptation, but the adaptation cannot be completed without the repair. 8. Relocation grant. This discretionary grant is designed to assist with relocation costs and/or purchasing costs of a new property where adaptations to existing accommodation are considered less appropriate or too costly, and a cheaper option is to assist with rehousing and, if necessary, to assist with carrying out adaptations at an alternative property. Finally, 9. Funding for temporary rehousing and to facilitate adaptations. This discretionary funding is available in exceptional circumstances to help with the cost of providing temporary accommodation while adaptations are undertaken at the disabled person's home. The Council will consider all requests for funding towards adaptation to a disabled person's home on a case-by-case basis. Cabinet colleagues, I ask that you approve the recommendations set out in this report. Thank you.
Any member? Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Aston. That's a lovely introduction. It just made me think somewhat that I know you mentioned that within the policy and within the way the government structures this, they haven't raised the actual limit of discretionary grant, the DFG funding limit, whereas other things that people have got for access to has raised, like for instance the benefit system and so forth. But I think that's a tragedy, really. Because I know that £30,000 might sound like a lot of money, but actually when you're putting an adaptation onto a building, it's not that much. So I'm really, really pleased that we've got this discretionary policy section of our own in the Appendix 4. Having tough times financially as an authority has always been a struggle, but knowing that where we can, and we do, support those residents that need that extra support. So I'm really, really supportive of this particular policy because this goes that extra mile as we do in Cheltenham. Interestingly, I think it's one of those structural things in the system, you may say, whereas leading from the question we had earlier on around adaptations or around housing and homes, you know, this is part of the back end of the system, whereas actually if it was on the front end of the system, we wouldn't need this. So we've got some way to go in I think, in terms of where we go as a housing as a society. Not something we can fix in Cheltenham, I know, but we're doing really, really good things to support those that need that support the most. So I welcome the report. Thank you, Neil.
Any other member? No? Thank you, Councillor Atherstone, for your comprehensive introduction of the situation, which is, as Pete said, we just go that extra mile. So can I see a show of hands to approve, please? Thank you, that's unanimous. The agenda item 6 for tonight is the budget monitoring report for 24-25, and that's the position that we're in until at the 31st of July this year. So it's the report of Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader, and I hope everyone enjoyed the novel-length reading I set you all over the weekend. There's something in there for everyone. I can assure you it's that long. But the clear top line that I think anybody reading this report will get is that we're in a tough spot. Delivering the services we love and doing the things that we do for the people of Cheltenham, and it is a truly astonishing range of services and provisions, is not getting any cheaper. It's getting more expensive, and in order to protect the services and the town that we love, we're going to have to close a pretty big financial gap. So I spent the weekend, as I often do in my wild mid-20s fashion, with council leaders and cabinet members from across the country and across party lines, who are all tasked with the rather unenviable challenge of setting council budgets. The one thing I realised quite quickly in my discussions is that we are unequivocally a hell of a lot better off than a lot of other councils. Decades of very sensible decisions and our really aspirational commercial attitude means that we have more buffer in our budget than many other councils, which means that we, unlike so many of the other councils who are deeply unlucky that I've been speaking to over the weekend, are able to deliver a pretty impressive range of discretionary services, ones that we don't have to legally deliver, but that we know the people of Cheltenham need and deserve. And as we move into this budget setting round, I can honestly say that I and my cabinet colleagues will ensure that vulnerable residents will be protected at all costs and the services they rely on will be defended. Which means that my job over the next few months is to work out with my officer team, who are far better than I am, how on earth we are going to deliver a resilient and balanced budget. A budget which allows us to face whatever's coming next, and your guess is as good as mine in our rather unstable and rather interesting financial climate. This is, quite frankly, the most important challenge facing this council. Whether we're trying to build more houses or tackle climate change, all roads lead to Rome. If we cannot balance this budget, we cannot deliver for our town. And I'm a really fierce defender of the principle that decisions made about Cheltenham's future must be made in Cheltenham by people in Cheltenham who understand the needs and the desires of the people of Cheltenham, not by expensive government consultants. But if we want to do that and to retain those decision-making powers, then we're going to have to make some tough choices. We have to balance that budget, and we will. I sat down with my cabinet colleagues yesterday. We will no doubt have many more discussions in the next few months. We will make those tough decisions because the alternative is unthinkable. But I do, on a little slightly lighter note, look forward to opening the consultation process fairly soon, so you're welcome to come and have a say and help me out a bit. Thank you, everyone.
Any member want to comment on the report?
I'd just like to commend Councillor Lewis on being both less gloomy and more optimistic than Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves at national level, even though she has painted a rightfully very realistic picture. But I think her emphasis on consultation is also in stark contrast to the way things are being conducted at national level, and I think it's to be commended, and strongly endorse her report.
Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Leader. This has prompted me to say something. I was going to not say something, but budget monitoring reports is quite a key document, I suppose, in our budgetary cycle. But we've had a Conservative government which set us on a roller coaster, and we've got a Labour government which is probably going to send us on a roller coaster. We've had a pandemic. We've had all kinds of things that faces this town, and Councillor Lewis, I'm sure, will do a diligent job in bringing forward that balanced budget. I know it's tough. I've been in this position myself, and the finance team do a wonderful job. But yeah, whatever comes across Cheltenham, from wherever it comes, we tend to weather that storm. So I'm looking forward to the budget and the budget setting process. Councillor Lewis. Thank you for the budget monitoring report, which I endorse.
Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Leader. I hope you can all hear me. I just want to say thank you for saying something in your report, and that was your commitment to vulnerable people. And I say thank you because all of us will know, having spoken to our residents across this town and having heard what's happening elsewhere in the country, how many pensioners are terrified of what's happening in the winter, how many feel they're being totally let down by government, how many look at the money that they have coming in and know they can't afford to heat and eat. And so the commitment to help those who are most vulnerable, and I know the work we're doing in housing in relation to making homes warmer and much better for the people living in them, I think will go a long way towards that. And the final thing I would say, Leader, is to echo what you said, Councillor Horwood, which is that we actually have so many councils in this country who are looking and saying, how the heck do we manage? We don't have the money to do what we know is needed. This council, over the years, has put itself into a position where it is not in that terrible place. And so I would like to thank officers and members over the years who've done that, because what a heck of a difference that makes, not to us as councillors, but to the people we are here to serve. Thank you all.
Any other member? I think I'd just like to make a comment that there's one that I think is one of our really big challenges, is the idea that, you know, you in a commercial world, you set your budgets for 3 years, for 5 years. You know what your income and expenditure is, but we don't get that. We don't get money from government or any commitment from government until we've got to go out to consultation on our budgets before we even know what the government's going to allocate us in the way of grants. And I think it's remarkable that I'm just looking around the room and thinking, oh, I've been here quite a long time, and I remember being here when actually we had money to spend on so many more discretionary services that we chose to do that are valued, or were valued. But we fight really hard to be innovative about finding different ways to do that, despite years of conservative cuts over a decade or more. And that's what we will continue to do, because we've got very committed officers and members as well. So thank you, Councillor Lewis. Unless you want to come back on anything, could I see a show of hands to support the recommendations? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. The final item for tonight's session is the declaration of Leckhampton Hill and Charlton Kings Common as a National Nature Reserve, and that's the report of Councillor Telford.
Thank you, Leader. Natural England have identified Leckhampton Hill as a potential site for declaration as a National Nature Reserve, and they would like to work with us as the council to achieve this and request our approval to undertake the declaration process. Personally, I think this is a great idea, and I'm asking you all to support this, obviously. National nature reserves include some of the best examples of England's wildlife and geology and are considered among the most important places for nature. They are managed in an exemplary way and are places to inspire people, promote learning, and encourage actions in the wider landscape. And I think we can all agree that Leckhampton Hill and Charlton Kings Common are a prime example of exactly this. It's a fantastic public asset to the people of Cheltenham, and I'm sure my dog Gus would agree if he could speak, but it is personally one of the highlights of calling this town our home. So thank you to everyone who works and volunteers to keep it that way. It is also already designated a site of special scientific interest due to the importance of its Jurassic limestone grassland on the escarpment slopes and the diversity of the associated flora and fauna there. So while we all know how important Leckhampton Hill is locally, the NNR status would recognise the national importance of its geology and associated habitats and species. and acknowledge the exemplary standard in which the site has been and continues to be managed by all of our teams, such as Adam and all of our volunteers, and the Friends of Leckhampton Hill, joining, and this would mean it could join an England-wide network of just over 200 NNRs. Designation doesn't create many additional burdens or maintenance challenges for us. It can let us we will need to put up some more signage, which I think is a good thing, so children can learn more about it. If geology students are visiting, they can see all of the information there. So without any particular additional costs for us, I can only see this as a good thing. So this report is just to ask us to authorise the Council's application to Natural England to become an approved body, to consent to designation of Leckhampton Hill and Charlton Kings Common as a National Nature Reserve, and authorise all the necessary actions by officers to facilitate this. Thank you.
Any member? Councillor Dobie.
My cabinet colleague has talked about this place being inspirational, and it certainly is. And I'd like to tell you just a little story about how it inspired me by way of an illustration of that. The historical quarries of Leckhampton Hill played an important part in my own education. As a 10-year-old carrying a copy of British Mesozoic fossils, I used to walk from the town up to the quarries of this beloved hill of ours, to spend many happy hours in this unusual place, searching for the remains of shallow Jurassic seas, looking for plants and creatures from the age of the dinosaurs. And by the way, you won't find any dinosaurs up there. I looked very hard when I was 10 or 11. Not yet, no. Anyway, but nevertheless, I gained a lifetime appreciation of nature and the beauty of this town park, because it is technically a town park. And I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, support this move to give it the national recognition it deserves, because it is a very special place to me and indeed to the people of Cheltenham.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Jeffries. Sorry, Councillor Jeffries, I saw your hand. Just a split second before I saw Councillor Horwood. So, Councillor Horwood.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd like to support this motion very enthusiastically as well, not only as a Leckhampton resident and councillor who's been visiting the hill since I was born, actually, but also as the mover of the declaration of a nature emergency by this council in March. And I think this bid for National Nature Reserve status will add to our list of achievements already in that motion. My only query, I suppose, is that the climate change wheel in the report is left blank, which actually, I think, given the inspirational story of Councillor Dobie, illustrating how sites like this educate and inspire, and how National Nature Reserve status is supposed to do that and enhance that, and also enhance the long-term protection, I would have thought that climate change wheel could have shone bright green on a number of its sectors. So perhaps officers could have a glance at that. But I think Leckhampton Hill is an amazingly special place. We've the flora, including exquisite wild orchids that can be seen there, are very exceptional. The wildlife, from butterflies like the Duke of Burgundy and the unfortunately named Chalk Hill Blue, but also deer, wood mice, field voles that can be seen sometimes as far away as Warden Hill. Deer has once strayed all the way across the Shirlington Road, I know, but and also birds like the rather better named yellowhammer and goldcrests. And as he rightly pointed out, the very important Jurassic geology and grassland on the site, which is rightly the focus of this report. But it's also politically really important. The geography is shaped by our industrial and transport history. It's full of quarries and inclines, and of course the famous Devil's Chimney. But it was also the site of the most spectacular piece of radical non-violent direct action, when in 1902, Walter Ballinger, who was the leader of the Leckhampton Stalwarts and who worked as a clay digger, manual clay digger, on the brickworks on which my house now stands on the site of, actually, amongst others, led a crowd to remove peacefully a cottage that had been built by the landlord, Henry Dale, brick by brick. And then later in 1906 led thousands up the hill, as they said, to go up the hill to down Dale. And to cut a much longer story short, in 1927 that campaign culminated in the public ownership of Leckhampton Hill, which has made it open and accessible for local people from all around the area, but also a safe space for nature in the way that this report endorses. So I'd like to thank Councillor, well, actually a few other thanks to Folk and to the Leckhampton Local History Society and to our own ranger team at CBC, actually, who do tremendous work on the hill, for all they do to protect it, but also to educate people about its importance. But also then to thank Councillor Tailford and Gus, I guess, and strongly endorse this report and really warmly support it. I think it's really important and it's great to celebrate Leckhampton Hill in this chamber. Thank you.
Can't see any other member. Councillor Telford, do you want to come back?
I just want to thank both the councillors for their thoughts on this. I think it's a really nice example of why Leckhampton Hill is so important to us as a town historically, and why over almost 100 years ago it became this public asset, and why we should do things like this to help ensure it's protected and looked after for everybody. Thank you.
I've got just picking up on Councillor Horwood's point of the climate change assessment. I think even retrospectively, it would be good to actually do that and fill it out, because that is going to tick so many of those boxes. And I'm sorry I missed that at Cabinet sign-off, that didn't spot it at that point. But it would be good, I think, to do that retrospectively. Thank you. If I could see a show of hands, please, to approve the report. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So the next agenda item is I'll go around the room for Cabinet member briefings. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. Just to sort of reiterate my point at the end of my speech, if you were living through the doom and gloom, that we'll be very keen to kick off budget consultation as soon as is feasible for us. So it's been very exciting for you all to get involved. So do come in and chip in some suggestions. I could really use some.
Councillor Telford.
Obviously an update in case anyone missed it on the weeds, everyone's favourite subject. Obviously we had a lot of wet and mild weather and more wet weather recently, and a reduced weed spray trial. So the weeds in Cheltenham got a little bit out of hand. And we received quite a lot of comments and concerns from residents and councillors about this. So we've been obviously working quite hard to get it sorted. So we recently announced our programme to solve this, going area by area to clean up our town. This includes reinstating the second weed spray, as well as additional manual clearance where required on larger weeds, and our new little street sweepers with weed ripper arms to get into the gullies of the road and clear out any of that debris, which I'm sure will help long term with any potential flooding in the future. I'm confident this will solve the problems and get us to a better place, and I'm happy we listened to residents on this and actually took action where it was required. On a vaguely related note, with all the wet weather on Friday and across the weekend, there's going to be an additional need for street cleaning to tidy up all the muck. So I just ask that people bear with us as we get around the town and try and clear up any of that as we can. Thank you.
Councillor Atherstone.
Just like to update with regards to our new approach to tackling graffiti and tagging. We are grateful to have received a grant for £15,000 from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, working with the Cheltenham Business Improvement District and local businesses to target the town centre specifically. It's going to be a 3-month pilot. We're going to map, remove and then patrol these various sites, including various practices for grade 1 and grade 2 listed buildings and council-owned properties and our public open spaces. And there is more to come in that area, as we are also investigating other town-wide approaches to tackling this antisocial criminal behaviour. I also like to promote the launch of the Healthy Start card, which is an amount of money put onto a prepaid card specifically for expectant mothers or those families with children under the ages of 4. They may be able to purchase fruit, veg, milk, baby formula, and this is all being hosted by the fantastic Springbank Community Centre. And there is information available online if you would like to check if you are eligible. And finally, I would like to extend a very happy retirement and also to say a huge thank you to Mark Nelson, an officer that I've enjoyed working with in my various cabinet roles over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Councillor Doby.
I'd like to report that my climate change and getting to net zero team continues to explore heat networks. What are heat networks, which are also known as district heating supplies? These provide a central source for customers in an urban area through a network of underground pipes, and the heat can come from a variety of sources. Now, we're responding to an invitation from DESNZ, which is the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, for funding to develop the business case for a town centre heat network. There's no financial commitment from CBC involved in this. We're examining the potential benefits, which include financial returns and savings. And at this point, we're reasonably confident there will be a positive business case to be made. But there's much work to do on this. More on this in October, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Doby. Councillor Clucas? Councillor Horwood?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd just like to celebrate really a spectacularly successful summer of sport and culture in Cheltenham and people from Cheltenham. I suppose especially those who competed in the Paris 2024 Olympics, including hockey player Flora Peel and Laura Collett, equestrian, who won team gold and individual bronze in Paris. And I think we should all congratulate her and all the other members of Team GB. But we also had a successful music festival, a successful paint festival, the conclusion of the wonderful Radev exhibition at the Wilson, and a spectacularly more successful start to the season at Whaddon Road than last year, which set some unfortunate records, which I've best forgotten now. So it's all looking very good. But we have had a few rainy days just recently, and I would like to particularly thank the staff teams at the Cheltenham Trust and at the Borough Council for the quick action they took in response to the leaks. I mean, there were many leaks that are visible all over the internet in various buildings and things locally from the extremely heavy rainfall, but they also affected the Town Hall and Leisure Centre. But I'm pleased to report that both are fully functional and open again. And I'd really like to thank the team for the work they did, sometimes over the weekend, to make that happen. Unfortunately, the celebration of our most famous son, Gustav Holst, the 150th anniversary celebrations that were due last weekend did have to be postponed. But I've talked to the officer team today, and the events team are determined to make that celebration happen at some point. And we're not quite sure when that will be, but the celebration has been only postponed, not cancelled. So again, I'd like to thank the teams who are involved in quickly managing that situation as well. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. Lots of positively good news flying around this evening, which is really good to hear. The project team for this building reached a milestone yesterday. Colleagues be aware that this building council took a decision, over 18 months ago, I think it was, or 12 months ago, to vacate this building. It's no longer the right size and shape for us as a council. So it gives me great pleasure, actually, to announce that officially, or unofficially, there's been the soft launch for the marketing disposal of the building, which happened yesterday. The official launch happens in a week or so's time. There's been some significant interest already. So we've reached what you might call an exciting milestone in the history of this building, which has been going on for over 100 years, having a council association. I'd like to put on record my thanks to the team project board for all the hard work that's gone to get us to this point. And I'll update you, no doubt, when we get further down the process. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. There's a couple of things I just want to raise. I think it's probably quite appropriate for us to say congratulations to our new MP, Max Wilkinson, who is now joined the front benches as spokesperson for culture, media and sport, which is perfect. Given that he's from our festival town, given that when he was one of our cabinet members, colleagues, that was his portfolio anyway, so he knows his stuff. So we wish him luck and enjoyment with that extra role that he's got. I'd also like to say congratulations and wish Annette White a very happy retirement. She's been with us for a great many years. So it is, you know, she's got a well-deserved retirement in the next couple of weeks. So thank you, Annette, for everything that you've done for all those years of service. I would like to just mention the fact that, you know, Councillor Hallwood, you mentioned the fact that, you know, there's been a lot of rain. Some of us have been out in it. I've watched some people jumping for joy. I've watched people sweating at putting sandbags because of bow waves. But what we've efficiently done, we have emergency planning systems here at the council. It's part of the remit of what we have to do. And I have to say that within hours, or an hour or two, that all cut into place. And the officer response from Gareth all the way down to comms, making sure that residents knew that we could keep up to date, all of that command, you know, cut in with the fire service. So for all of that team that form part of the emergency planning across all the organisations, you know, fire, police, ambulance, the council, it's a huge effort and a huge commitment to try and do what we can to make sure that our residents are safe, and if not safe in their own homes, that they have somewhere safe to go. So a massive thank you to the officer over the last week, particularly all over the weekend. That brings us to the end of our cabinet meeting. Oh no, it doesn't. I've got decisions. I beg your pardon. I jumped ahead of myself. So we do have some decisions that were made since the last cabinet meeting. I made an appointment of residents to the Cabinet Housing Committee, which is actually meeting tomorrow for the first time. So that's very exciting to have residents involved in that committee. The Public Business Plan went to ONS. It's also gone through all of the other councils, and we've approved the business plan for 24-25. And I made that decision on the 16th of August. The Community Pride grants, come to Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Lydia. Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to say that we have successfully allocated the £30,000 for the Community Pride grant to a number of very deserving community organisations. So really pleased about that.
In the absence of Councillor Collins, Forest of Dean asked for, as part of their proposed response and consultation on their draft local plan, they sent it to us, the comment, and Councillor Collins made a decision and approved that on the 3rd of September. And also, as many of you will know, we have a tree inspection protocol, and again, Councillor Collins made the decision, took that decision back on the 6th of September. I think that covers off all of the decisions that we've made since the last cabinet meeting. That now puts us into the realms of saying that we now need to move into the closed session under the Local Government Act, exempt business. So the Cabinet's recommended to approve the following resolution, that in accordance with section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining agenda items, and is likely that in a view of the nature of the business to be transacted on or the nature of the proceedings, if members of the public are present, there will be disclosed to them exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 and 5 of Part 1, Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, namely, paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Paragraph 5, information in respect of which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in legal proceedings.